Judging by Richard Posner, U.S. Court of Appeals, 7th Circuit, and I think it's in the spirit of today's discussion, renewed commitment, quote, renewed commitment to legal realism, whereby a good judge gathers facts, carefully considers context, and comes to a sensible conclusion that avoids inflicting collateral damage on the other areas of the law. So I figured I'd say something motivational to get us started, round 2 here. And I thank Supreme Court Justice Chris Pickering for providing that to me some time ago. Okay, so here we are again, round 2. I just want to go over the rules one more time. Silence the cell phones. We had the long takeout order going before. Again, this is an interview, not a debate. Unfortunately, I would love a debate, but can't have everything. But it is an interview. The idea is that each panelist will ask one question. They can direct it at a specific candidate or both, and they'll let you know which ones. They'll have 30 seconds to ask their questions. The candidates will have 1 minute to respond. And again, I'll repeat the general rule and the theme of this. This is not a forum to air personal grievances, but rather to educate. This is to educate the public and the veterans in politics. And the cardinal rule here is candidates are not allowed to speak about other candidates, which so far has been not an issue, of course. We're in a 30-minute time segment for each department. We've been holding very true, steady, and everyone's been doing a very great job. It's a long day. With that said, I'd like to start off with candidate introductions. I'm also the official timekeeper. You both get a minute and 30 seconds, and if you hear me say thank you, you know that your time is up, and we'll move on. In any event, we have with us today Judge Ron Israel, and I can't see your name tag there, Susan Bush. Okay, so with that, let me start with Judge Israel. Your introduction.
Ladies first.
Well, you know,
I'm old school.
We can do old school. I mean, I have no objection. I was just doing incumbents first because that's sort of a protocol. But
Whatever you guys
okay, we'll start with Susan. And I'm fairly informal, but I will keep you focused on your time.
Good afternoon, and thank you guys for being here and taking time away from your families to be on this panel to educate the public about us. My name is Susan Bush. I've lived in Las Vegas for 18 years. My stepfather is a veteran. He served in Vietnam. I've represented many veterans in my career as a lawyer. I moved to Las Vegas from Southern California about 18 years ago to attend college. I worked my way through college. I went to UNLV, and then I went on to the Boyd School of Law. After college, I graduated. I did a law clerk position with Justice Court, went on to work for a law firm in the Howard Hughes Center defending multi-million-dollar cases. About 8 years ago, I opened up my own law firm to do what I call street law, which is representing everyday average people, carpenters, store owners, people, neighbors of mine, just everyday people, representing clients, not corporations, and I love it. I do pro bono work. I am a state mentee to newly admitted attorneys. I've worked with foster children, and I do internships and externships with high school students and college students at my law firm. I'm looking forward to your vote.
Okay, thank you. Judge Israel.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron Israel. I'm the District Court Judge in Department 28. Department 28 is designated as a civil department. The legislature passed that and introduced 7 new civil departments in 2008. I took office, or I ran for election in 2010. I've been in Las Vegas 33 years. I've been a attorney, of course, most of that time. I've been an arbitrator for 15 years, a short trial for judge for 10 years, and now I'm in my 4th year on the bench. I did civil practice during those 33 years. My grandfather was in the First World War. My father was in the Army Reserves for 20 years. He retired as a master sergeant. And I would like to introduce 2 of the 5 Cinco Amigo friends. They're both veterans, and one of the reasons the Veterans Association is so important to me, one of my friends has to go to California when he has problems, medical issues, I won't go into them, for treatment. And so I've been well aware of that because several years ago I had to take his dog down to him when he was in the hospital, and his wife, of course, was down in LA living at family and friends because they don't pay for you to stay in a hotel even though your husband's in a hospital 300 miles away. So that's, thank you.
Perfect, a minute and a half exactly. Okay.
I timed it.
That's good. That's good. Well, we've been starting down with Lynn, and again, please, all the panels, please use the microphone because this is being recorded. Certainly, feel free to direct your question at one or both candidates, and please let them know that. And, in the absence of an order, I'll try to rotate it to give a sense of fairness. But Lynn, please go ahead.
I will address my question to both distinguished candidates. Do you believe in a constitutional right for LGBT couples to marry? And if it were recognized in another state and that couple were to come to Nevada, would you recognize that union in this state? Judge Israel, take over.
Okay. Well, first of all, as you know, and I'm sure I know that the instructions were given to you, something that could come before me, I can't comment and give you my personal opinion. However, I can tell you that I enforce the law as it is, and we all know that there's a constitutional prohibition in Nevada. Having said that, what the Supreme Court certainly did in the past and may do in the future could change that. And I will follow the law as it's written.
Lynn, of course, I would follow the law as written, but I have represented clients who have been married in other states and have came here and had litigation pending. I've always recognized that individual as their husband or wife since they are married in another state.
Okay, thank you. And we have a new panelist for this round. I'd like to welcome Kofu Oso. I'm hopefully pronouncing that right.
Yeah.
So please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, this will be to both. As a lawyer working for many years and dealing with the public, what issues did you see that you can now address as a judge or would like to address?
Who do you want? I went first. You want to go first?
Doesn't matter who
Or
goes
you
first.
want- I'll go first.
As long as you
Whatever.
both answer.
You choose.
Okay, so the lady goes first and then the gentleman after.
One of the things I want to do is serve as a judge is to promote community service. I was fortunate because I came to Las Vegas and I was one of the second classes at the law school. So a lot of the judges taught my law school classes, did my externships, and took me under their wing and influenced me. And I want to be able to serve my community by giving back. Currently, I do mentor new students, new attorneys, and I think as a judge, you need to promote the judiciary, whether you're judging the court competitions, you're out in the public speaking at events, you need to promote the judiciary throughout, besides just being on the bench.
And yeah, as Susan said, I'm on the board of directors of the Anti-Defamation League. It doesn't conflict with my duties as a judge, and certainly they, at least at this point, have never brought anything up that would be in front of me. That sort of goes and answers part of Lynn's question. I'm also a mentor for a mock trial at one of the schools, and I absolutely am promoting pro bono in the courtroom. We generally play a tape that was presented by the Supreme Court promoting pro bono. It's about a 6-minute tape video that we play in the courtroom before our morning calendars, and in the hopes to get attorneys to take on pro bono cases.
Okay, thank you. Forrest, you're up.
This is not a pending case I'm going to ask you about. It's one that's been decided. It will never come before your court. So hopefully you can give me your opinion on it. I'd like both of you to say a few words on why you think the Citizens United decision was a good one or a bad one.
You have to tell us who you want to go first.
I'll go first.
Switch up? Okay.
Yeah, we'll rotate it around.
All right.
That's a difficult one because that was decided on free speech and whether or not funding could go to campaigns by big corporations, and that it was decided it was a free speech and you could donate. But the problem is that when someone wants to get a message out, if you have big corporations donating money, their message gets out besides the average person. So while it was a free speech was upheld, it actually prevented, I think, some people from getting their messages out. It was a split decision in the Supreme Court, and I'm kind of split on it too.
Since it was decided, I'm sure hundreds of millions of dollars have been put into campaigns by private individuals. The Supreme Court has decided, and certainly I will follow the Supreme Court's decision on a personal. In Nevada, corporations aren't citizens. Corporations have to be represented by attorneys. Individuals can represent themselves. There are numerous distinctions. Why the Supreme Court, in a very split and contested decision, decided that corporations for that particular issue are private citizens, I guess you read the opinion.
Okay.
Quick follow-up, you didn't tell me I've read the opinion many times. Are you for it? Did you think it was a sound decision or not?
No.
Okay.
Again, I'm going to play the heavy. Let's, for the moment, stick with one question per panelist, and if we have some time left over, we can try to extend it a bit. But just bear with me here. Okay, Jason, you're up.
Thank you, both of you, for spending part of your Sunday with us to the panel. My question is for both of you, and we'll start with Judge Israel. Since you've already touched base a little bit on this, I would like to know, besides in your professional environment as a sitting judge and as an attorney, I know you're giving back to your community through those directions. However, what else beyond your professional career do you do for the community, giving back to the community, and working with the community to make the community better here?
Well, I'm an Eagle Scout, and I help in scouting, but I'm not a scoutmaster or anything, but I do go to the events, the major events they have in the community, and support that. Aside from that, as I said, I still help out raising funds at for scholarships at the school that my daughter goes to. And when I say that, that's one thing I do where I'm not just writing a check. I do that, and I think I do that successfully, but I personally helped set up for the fundraiser, which actually happened a month or so ago, and physically doing that is part of my community service also. So that's the majority of it.
Thank you.
Well, I have a friend who has a daughter with Down syndrome, so we do participate in their programs, the Buddy Walk program every year, and that's probably the charity, if I do have time, I spend my time with. Other than that, most of my time is devoted doing either pro bono work. I've represented children in the foster care system. One of my cases went on for several years where I represented a group of children. In addition, I go to the law school. I judge a lot of the competitions. I do have high school students that come into my office that spend a semester there. People from the college, community college have came in for college credit, where I donate my time to take them to court, show them around. They spend a semester and actually get credit for that. And currently I have a UNLV student that's volunteering in my office that I spend their time to. Also, the state bar did appoint me as a mentee, where I mentor students, and it's a substantial amount of time. I spend probably 6 months with one newly admitted attorney, and the attorney spends time with me, showing them around, going through the ethics, the rules, and helping them adjust to being a new attorney.
Okay, thank you. Angie.
Okay, so in regards to judicial activism, or just looking at specific circumstances, not always going according with what's actually illegal, what's not illegal, or what is illegal and what's not illegal. If you look at the case specifically of the government shutdown this last fall, where the veterans ended up, sometimes they were wheelchair bound, some of them had different appendages that were gone. They essentially, when the government shut down, they shut down the memorials, the World War II Memorial and the Vietnam Memorial, and some of these veterans who had pre-scheduled flights to come in and visit their own memorials, they were locked out of it via barricades. And some of them were arrested and charged with trespassing and destruction of government property. And those types of scenarios where there's clearly, extenuating circumstances, how likely are you to just dismiss those charges?
Well, should I go first, or?
Go ahead.
Department 28, and maybe a lot of people don't realize, we only handle civil. The legislature set it up that way because we actually get paid separately, different and apart from the other judges. So having a criminal case, and I assume that's what you're referring to, is not going to happen in Department 28. But if you're asking my personal opinion, obviously I give, I have to weigh the issues and take them on a case-by-case basis. Whether they're civil, certainly in the criminal context, I would do the same. The specific issues you said, obviously, I don't know any judge that's going to convict a veteran for going to visit the Veterans Memorial in a planned trip. I don't know that it's happened, but no, I wouldn't do that if you're asking. But those cases just don't happen in front of us.
I mean, that's just a specific example, but if you were to look at it as there's a situation in your courtroom where somebody was technically wrong, but the punishment or whatever would not necessarily fit the crime, how likely would you be to take those circumstances into consideration?
Well, as you said, we as judges, we're given the decision-making power as what sentence to impose, whether it be, the high end or the low end. So a lot of that is discretionary, and certainly I think if I was doing, criminal, I haven't had in the fourth year any fact pattern like you're suggesting, but certainly that's what we're given discretion. And as I said before, I wouldn't sanction somebody for going to a Veterans Memorial event who's a veteran, or going to the memorial who's a veteran, under those circumstances, or for that matter, anything. Hopefully that answers.
Thank you. I want to get Susan in on this.
And if that's the type of case, I would take pro bono and represent that individual. And those are the type of cases I think that attorneys should take pro bono or push those issues. But as far as if I'm sitting as a judge, I would have to apply the law as written, but you take in those mitigating factors of why a person's going there, who's that person in the sentencing. And I would hope that the prosecutors are prosecuting those cases, look at those mitigating factors and make the choice whether or not to prosecute them.
Okay, thank you. Stuart.
Good afternoon, both of you. Thank you for coming. I'd like to understand somewhat how you constitutionally think. So my question to you is, one, do you see yourself as a strict constructionist or not? Or tell me about a Supreme Court case that you agree with or disagree with, so I can understand how you view the Constitution and its implications in terms of how you think.
Susan, you can start first.
Sure. I'm not a constitutionalist. I do uphold the Constitution, do value it. A Supreme Court case of mine, I would say probably didn't agree with. I am Susan Bush, but Bush v. Gore I didn't agree with, and I'll go over there. I think I would like to see a recount, and I think that it took the powers away from the state.
Ron.
Sure. I wouldn't say that I'm a strict constructionist, but I do, and I'm sworn to uphold the Constitution. I think what would explain it maybe, and although I only have 60 seconds, there is the Mensing case. The Mensing case came out a few years ago, and what it says very briefly is that everyone who takes prescription drugs, if they are generic, you cannot sue the drug manufacturer. Well, that's what the U.S. Supreme Court said in a very, very contested decision. And I had to uphold that in the endoscopy case. And you're all familiar with the endoscopy case. However, there was interpretation regarding what had to do with advertising. And my decision was that the advertising that they did was separate and apart from the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, which the Teva drug manufacturer was saying meant that you could not sue them under any circumstances. So if you take a prescription drug that's generic, you're out of luck. That's what they argue.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem. I just doing my job. Okay. Who's next? Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you for coming. Do you feel that voters should show a state identification card, whether it's driver's license, passport, some sort of ID, in order to cast their vote? Judge, we'll start with you first.
Well, in Nevada, it's my understanding that you have to show something in order to get registered. That's why a lot of registration is done at the DMV. I don't favor restricting individuals by requiring IDs, but that is done and was done back, I think, over 100 years ago in the South, which is why the legislature passed all the laws. However, I think it's important that only citizens vote. That's our right and our privilege to do that.
Hey, thank you. Susan?
That is really a policy question. It's going to be to the legislature, so I think we'll have to go with whatever the legislature says on that, and I'm not going to get an advisory opinion on that one.
Okay, as a way of background, it was heavily discussed in legislative operations in the Assembly, so just providing that additional information. Okay, we have Robert.
You both have been running for judge now, and you ran twice, and you understand you have to go out and raise money in order to be effective and get your message out. Do you believe it compromises your ability to be objective when you're raising money from law firms that may have cases in front of you? And should there be maybe some public financing instead, rather than having to ask money from law firms that do have business in the courts? Judge Israel first.
I'll give you a perfect example of why I don't think it certainly doesn't affect me. In my election last time, the largest contributor I had, for whatever reason, called me about 3 months later to tell me that he had a case in front of my department. So within 24 hours, I recused myself from that case and recused myself from all cases that he handled, period. Now, I'm sure I won't get any more contributions, but since I have put up, and I don't know if you want to know the amount of money, my own personal money to run, his contributions were insignificant. I'm not going to compromise my values for, a few $1,000s. And I can tell you I put in a lot of my own money because I think it's important.
Okay, I actually am going to redirect a little bit because I think the question was how do you think it impacts on the electoral process, if I'm understanding you correctly. Do you think it affects, not so much on your situation, but do you think people contributing money to judges who are running for office?
I wish we didn't have to do it, absolutely. If you're asking, yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate, and it can potentially create problems like that. I wish we had a retention system. That's not up to me. The voters have voted many times to vote for judges. But maybe I guess I did misunderstand the question.
No, that's okay. I'm just trying to moderate. Susan?
Sure, it would be nice if we did have public financing and we wouldn't have to ask for our lawyers to support a judge or to re-elect a judge or elect a judge. But unfortunately, we don't. But the one thing we do have is transparency in Nevada. You can look and see who donated to a specific judge and to their campaign. And that allows another party, if there is something going on or there is concerns, to raise it in the court.
Okay. Well, as all the panelists have asked their question. We were running 5 minutes ahead of schedule here. Again, unprecedented. Is there, I'll go for one more question if there's a panelist that's like dying to ask one, but keep in mind that we are almost at the end of our time. Are there any more, is there some dying to ask another question? Angie.
Okay, so basically, let's look at the case of the nun. Are you guys familiar with the nun that was 83 years old and she broke into the nuclear power plant? She was subsequently sentenced to, she broke into the power plant to show a lack of security at this atomic power plant, and she was subsequently sentenced to 35 years in prison over this. How would you view that case in informing the jury of the right to nullify?
I'll have Susan start with that.
And because we don't have jury nullification in Nevada, we wouldn't be able to advise them the right to nullify. And of course, I'm not specifically familiar with the facts of that case, so I wouldn't feel comfortable giving an opinion as to that.
But basically, you could, would you tell the jury that basically they would be able to give a lesser sentence, or what would you do with that scenario? Do you think it's right that, technically, yes, it was mandatory minimum, she had to do 35 years. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in the state court, it wouldn't be the jury that would give them the sentence, and the jury isn't advised of what the sentencing would be at the time they're rendering whether someone's guilty or not guilty on a charge.
Okay, Ron.
And I'm not familiar with that particular case either, but certainly if you're asking for, regarding jury nullification, if jury nullification were specifically, we have instructions that that's grounds for excusing a juror. Matter of fact, we tell them that, yes, you have to follow the law, but in sentencing, the judge has discretion in the case. So, and I think that has to do with a federal case back east, and we don't have mandatory minimums regarding breaking and entering.
Okay, this is the last question, and make it fast, and go for it, Forrest.
Yeah, I just have to follow up on that. It's always been my understanding on jury nullification, if the jury sees a case and absolutely disagrees with the law, disagrees with instructions, disagrees with everything, that the judge, they come back unanimously and find the person not guilty. It's always been my understanding that the judge can do nothing about that. Am I incorrect?
We'll start with Judge Israel.
First of all, I think people have the misconception that somehow we know what the juries are talking about or what their decision was based on. So you're absolutely right. If the jury in a civil or criminal case, if they come back, their decision is their decision. And especially in a criminal case, you can't, set aside under the facts you talked about their decision. In civil cases, again, if the jury comes back with a decision, there would have to be some specific showing of error before you could do anything, even assuming, well, yes, you're right, basically. It's their decision.
Okay, thank you, and Susan, you can wrap this up for us.
Sure. You are correct. I actually had the pleasure of serving on a jury and was a foreman. It was a big insight, but during nullification, we can't advise them. They have to follow the laws written as jurors. But that's a secret power the jury has that some jurors do use, and they just don't follow the law and will nullify.
Great. Well, we're right at our time limit, and I want to thank the candidates for Department 28.